Drive on 93.7 The Ticket.
I gotta do what I gotta do.
Jake Bogus and Nick Barr.
Come on now.
This is The Drive. Streaming online at theticketfm.com.
Throwback Thursday on The Drive, 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com. Nick Barr, Jake Bogus, joined by a friend of the show, one of my favorite guys to have on, Bryan Munson, Red Report and FoxSports.com. Bryan, you said you're coming up for the Penn State game, right?
I think that's the weekend that I can get up there, yeah.
Okay, we got to play some poker, big guy.
All right, man. I'm gonna take you up on that one.
All right, good. Yeah, find a nice little home tournament, and Nick and I will destroy you.
We'll sit down and mop it up, baby.
Brian's a poker guy?
Yeah, a big poker player.
Really?
Yeah. Bryan,
see, Texas Hold'em to me is like too big of a time commitment. Like, you sit down and you're legitimately going to play Texas Hold'em. I mean, you're looking at a minimum of probably 2 to 3 hours.
Oh, okay. No, absolutely, yeah.
Right?
I literally sit down, and it's like, you come home from the day, and we'll get back to football here in a second, but come home from the day at 5 o'clock, hit the table at 6:30, and I'll be dead tired when I get home from work, but I'll sit down for the next 8 hours, and it goes by like a blessing.
Yeah. I've been there and done that. College was a good time for me, Bryan.
Nice.
Hey, Bryan, you've probably got a busy weekend, though, with all these recruits coming to town. I'm sure you've got a lot of stories you're going to pump out.
I tell you what, I just got the phone with Josh, in fact, and I said I just updated our visitor list up on Big Red Report, updating the guys. And we've got a combination there of the official visitors and the known unofficial visitors that are coming in this weekend. And right now we're sitting at a total of 14 seniors. We also know about at least one junior, Alan Lazard from over in Iowa, that's holding a Nebraska offer. He's going to be one of the top-rated wide receivers in the nation next year. So, it's going to be a very busy weekend for me.
Hey, is Johnny Stanton coming?
No, he is not.
Okay.
Johnny Stanton is not coming after all, and actually I just received an update as well. Drake Martinez from Laguna Beach High School, younger brother of Tina Martinez, will not be in town this weekend either.
What's the scoop there?
I'm not totally sure. It could have been just a mere scheduling conflict with Drake. Of course, media access to him is being restricted, so we have to really go more through his high school to get in touch with him. But what I've been able to deduce from the whole situation is that this weekend just did not work out, and there will be another weekend. It sounds like that he potentially could be in Lincoln later on this season.
You mentioned that wide receiver, Lazard is his name?
Yes.
Okay, and what? Obviously he's not going to commit right after the game. What are the 2 or 3 players that you think after this game on Saturday have the best chance of committing?
I really like Nebraska's chances with David Neville right now, and he's going to be the Canadian on the sideline from Brantford, Ontario. This book for the largest human being on the sideline, and I'm pretty sure it'll be Neville. He's about 6'8" and 300 pounds. Good sized guy, really rocketing up some people's boards here. I question a little bit about his foot speed being that big, but I think you have a chance to work the agility aspect with some guys. I like Neville and what he can do potentially over there at that right tackle position in Nebraska. I'd say beyond that, I think Nebraska has to really focus their attention on the 2 UCLA commitments then that are coming in. Kenny Lacy and Christian Morris are both coming in, both 4-star offensive tackles, according to Scott.com. And I think this is a huge victory, number one, just to get him in town. After how Nebraska played on the road in the Rose Bowl, to get 2 guys that were in the stands that night to come to Lincoln now and check out a game in Lincoln, it's a huge victory just to get that to happen. But they've got to go ahead now and start really hitting these guys up about the playing situation and what they can do in Nebraska immediately. I also like what happened here with Deshaun Hunt, Westlake Village cornerback. He's a deep commitment from UCLA, hoping things back up. I think Nebraska sits pretty good with Hunt right now, too.
How did Tom Osborne factor into the world of recruiting, and now that he's stepping down, how does that affect things? Did Tom Osborne register at all with some of the younger kids these days at all?
Oh, absolutely. I talked to Terrell Newby last week, official visitor last weekend from California, and he couldn't stop talking about Tom Osborne. Now, first of all, he got into town on Thursday, which really meant that he was going up to the to the hotel and falling asleep, and then it was a full day Friday, full day Saturday, out sometime on Sunday. But he mentioned the first thing about his activities on Friday was, I had a chance to meet Coach Tom Osborne, and he goes, great guy, great human being. I mean, just went on and on and on. That was like the first thing he talked about about his official visit. So Tom Osborne is very, very, very much a huge part of the weekend and what those guys come in there. And he has great talks with those guys, and they leave, and they all mention sitting down and talking with him.
Bryan Munson is our guest. Big Red Report and FoxSports.com.
Brian, anything else in terms of, I thought I saw Trayshawn Thurman is coming into town this week as well, and unofficial, anything else because this is one thing is, if you got a great situation, Tim Miles should capitalize on a good, setting for football as well.
Now, he typically does.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a guy that isn't playing around too much, and he's going to bring in guys whenever he has a chance to. I don't know anything about the official visitors this weekend, but of course, he brought in Biddle Brown, I think was the first guy that was like the home opener. He does piggyback on what Nebraska's got going on, just like what Nebraska does with Nebraska basketball in the spring. But Miles is no dummy. I think that's a guy right there that is doing some things right, and I think, in my opinion, he's a guy that's luring a lot of talent, at least in Nebraska, to take visits that I think in years past, Nebraska wouldn't have a chance to even bring those guys to town.
Bryan Munson, our guest, Big Red Report, FoxSports.com. I'm sure you heard about David Gilbert at Wisconsin talking trash to Taylor Martinez.
I did. Yeah, skipping rocks.
Yeah, skipping rocks. What do you think about those comments, Brian?
I think they're. I think first of all, it's bad timing on his part. I don't think you want to take a fire and add gasoline to it. And what he did is he just brought two big buckets of it and threw it on there. I think Nebraska wants this game so badly Saturday night to add any type of incentive like that to prove those guys wrong and shut them up. I think it's a huge incentive. I don't think beyond that it's going to influence the way Tim Martinez is going to go out and perform Saturday night. I think Taylor has to play within the system. I think this is one of the things that he's realized, that when he is in the system and the system is in sync, they are very tough to stop. And that means that he needs to be much more of just a distributor than a playmaker. He needs to make the other players around him, just as good as what he can be when he's breaking it for 85 yards on a read option. So I think it was, if I was his coach, I'd be very upset that you're inflaming a situation like that. But then again, if Eileen is a realist, because I really do think Nebraska's got a great chance to win by 20-some-odd points on Saturday night, he may be looking for some sort of a motivational deal to go ahead and get his players fired up, and he may be looking at it that way too. But from my standpoint, I would not have liked if my player did that.
Hey, I don't know if you had watched him play or you had heard of him. Any thoughts on Joel Stave coming out of high school? I mean, how good of a player was he?
Well, you know what? I actually did watch his film when they announced him a starter last week, and I was just kind of interested in seeing if we were talking about a statue or a guy that had some mobility. And he's got some mobility. I mean, he's about a 4'7" guy. He's longer. He's lanky. I don't want to sit there and call him a dual threat guy. I think I would stop way short of that. But he's a guy at least that has mobility, and you have to go ahead and take that into consideration. That being said, he's a pretty nice quarterback. He actually chose to go to Wisconsin over offers. He walked on at Wisconsin and quickly got an offer when he went up there. I think he's a very capable quarterback. Watched a little bit of their highlights last weekend. Does some good things. Keeps his eyes downfield. And it sounds like to me, in the part that doesn't really register when you watch him on film, is that he's a leader. And, I think he's probably a couple years away, and his best football is still ahead of him at Wisconsin. But I think he's a guy that's going to develop into a very good quarterback. I think that by putting him into a situation coming there Saturday night, it's going to be asking him to do a lot for that offense. I think that offense the problems that they're having, I think, still to me, you start up front. I don't think their offensive line is close to what they had last season, and I think also that they have real struggles against the pass.
How closely have you followed Wisconsin this season, Brian? And the reason I ask that is because I think all of us are kind of scratching our heads at the 13 points that Nebraska is giving them, or that Wisconsin's getting this weekend.
I've watched them against Oregon State. I watched them against UTEP, and I can remember who they played the first week, but I kind of bounced back and forth there when they were struggling that first week as well. This team really is struggling to find an identity, and I believe it started with O'Brien at quarterback. I just don't feel like he was a great fit. Most times, it's very difficult to go ahead and just create team chemistry by bringing in a guy like that. That's transfer in, immediately qualifies to get on the football field, unless your name is Wilson. He did an excellent job last year, but I don't think anybody's doubting how good that guy was now. I mean, he's doing a terrific job in the NFL. But I think it started with O'Brien. I don't think the chemistry was really there. I think Wilson was good for probably 3 touchdowns a game is what I want to kind of estimate by going back and looking at last season. I think that was the difference between the two guys, maybe even more. But that offensive line isn't the same either. They lost some guys. Those guys are playing in the NFL now, too. So I think that there's, I don't think a lot of guys are putting a lot of credit either or giving a lot of value to Chris leaving and going to Pitt. I think that that's a big part of why their offense is struggling right now. And I think that they're still trying to get around, finding ways to replace Wilson and try to find team chemistry, especially on that offensive line.
Well, how do you think Nebraska approaches things from a defensive perspective? You think they just absolutely load the box and say, all right, Stavi, see what you can do?
I think you have to. I think that the one thing that Nebraska and the coaches should realize over the last 2 weeks is the best way to defend the pass is with the pass rush. I don't think you can go ahead and expect your defensive backs to stay with players like Abadaris for 4 seconds. I think that that's wishful thinking at best. I think it's suicide in some cases. You want to go ahead and let them do that, be prepared to get sliced up back there. I think that what you do now is you find different ways to get Eric Martin out there and let him pin his ears back a little bit. I would do the same with Cameron Meredith. I would try to bring different blitz packages. I got a young quarterback. I've got some guys that are unorganized up front, and I think I can confuse, that I can get after a little bit, and I want to test them. And I want to rattle their cage. I want to put them in a hole and get them in a deficit early on in that football game on Saturday night, and then just take it over.
Hey, Brian, I got a couple more recruiting questions for you because I'm just curious. Bo Pelini mentioned at his Monday press conference, he used the term spinning wheels. He feels like he's just spinning wheels on the East Coast when he's going after certain players, and they're going to get out of that area, maybe focus more on Ohio, maybe focus more on Texas, Florida, and California. Is that good that Nebraska is getting out of the East Coast area?
Yes.
Why is that? Why is that?
Well, the idea is that from a spinning wheels comment perspective, I think what Bo Pelini right there is trying to say is that you're throwing good money at bad. I'm going to keep laying some more analogies down at you guys, but you can take that effort that you're placing on these players out there on the East Coast, whether it's evaluation or going out there and watching their football games or watching their film. It all takes time. And if you found out that out of 50 players from a certain region in the Northeast down to the Southeast, that you just don't land any players out of there, and you don't even get serious interest out of that state, that you have to take your interest and your time and make it work in other places. I don't know how else to really explain it except that, if you decided that you didn't want to have a job, and you want to sit there and play the lottery all day long, you're going to go broke. And that's exactly what's going on there. You've got to take your money and your time and put it someplace else where you can be productive and you can show some results. And Nebraska was not getting the types of results. I think that basically they were vesting by going out there on the East Coast and trying to recruit those players.
Okay, and the other thing I wanted to ask you with recruiting is players that are visiting this weekend. I'm just checking out Big Red Report right now. Other than kids that are already committed to Nebraska, there's one 4-star that's visiting. Deshaun Hunt, a cornerback. Tell us about him.
Deshaun Hunt is UCLA decommit. He committed back in the summer, July. I think actually it was in June. Not an overly big guy. When you look at his height and weight there, it's 5'9", 175. But this is like a Josh Mitchell kind of guy. Scrappy, real physical, has great ball skills. I think he does get overlooked a little bit because he doesn't have, the great speed, but he has tremendous quickness. But I think what this guy really does in the field, though, really well is that he doesn't play like a 5'9" guy. I mean, he plays more like a 5'11", 6-foot guy. And I think also the one thing that it's really great about Hunt, you can watch his film right there on Big Red Report, is he comes up to support the run about as well as he supports the pass. And you love seeing that physical side in the cornerbacks because you can't bring those guys to college that don't know how to tackle and support the run game and then just expect them to do it in college. They have to instinctually have that ability, and you have to see that at the high school level, and Hunt definitely has that.
Bryan, did you think Andy Janovich would come in and see the field right away? Did you think he was a guy as a walk-on that was undervalued, or are you surprised by this at all?
Am I surprised he saw the field? A little bit. I mean, I think Morrow was a guy that I was really looking to be impressed with this fall. I wasn't sure where C.J. Zimmer fell in that kind of that picture. I wasn't sure if Amani Cross would potentially get a look at fullback if they were looking at getting him some reps at running back as well to where he could split some reps. Janovich, to me, though, his coming out party was the Shrine Bowl. And everything that was out there that was written about him and just how he looked in comparison and how physical he was and just how tough he was. And when you start putting some of those things together, it just sounds like a Nebraska fullback. And I do want to say that I was a little bit surprised, but if there was a guy out of the walk-on class that I was probably the most eager to see play, it was Janovich. And I thought he could be a guy that somewhere down the road would produce. Having the opportunity to do it as a freshman, for him to go ahead and seize it and take it on like he has, it really speaks a lot to his athleticism, his just maturity as a player.
He is Bryan Munson, Big Red Report, and FoxSports.com. Thanks so much for the time, Bryan.
You bet, you guys. Thank you so much for having me.
You bet. Good stuff there from Bryan.
Good stuff.
Good stuff. He was a good one. Hey, listen, I'm looking at the visit list here on Big Red Report. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of guys coming, but I mean, I'm just looking at the scout ratings. There's only that Deshaun Hunt. He's the only 4-star that's visiting that hasn't committed to Nebraska. Other than that, you've got Banderas and Lockett taking their official visits, all that kind of stuff. It's just a big weekend for a lot of guys. Hopefully, you can get a lot of commits out of it because, Nebraska's trying to have such a big class this year.
It's going to be a cool scene, man. It's going to be a really cool scene. Under the lights, Wisconsin.
Alternate
unis. It's going to be, the buzz is going to be in the air big time on Saturday night. I'm excited to this wide receiver from Iowa. Sounds like he could be legit.
Lazard.
Yeah.
Lazard.
Kind of exciting.
What else I can tell you? Hey, I was telling you that David Neville, the big guy, 6'8".
Damn.
6'8", 295. So he is going to be the biggest guy you would see out there.
It's Almeida.
Yeah.
Going to go walk on and be Almeida.
Almeida. Hey, we'll wrap up the show. Coming up next, it is The Drive.
Kia of Lincoln takes it in so many ways.